My name is Sue Nash, raised mainly in Minnesota, and my mother was a nurse. My father was a Methodist minister, and my father had wanted me to be a nurse. That was partly a woman can always get a job as a nurse, that's sexist narrative. I got my bachelor's then. While I was in the nursing program, I worked at the Children's Rehabilitation Unit at the University of Minnesota, and there was an LPN that used to terrorize the young children. It was painful to watch. I decided I would teach nursing to try to prevent people like that from doing things like that.
My name is Cheryl Looning, and I'm currently a professor of nursing. I grew up in eastern South Dakota on the prairie. I think I have always been interested in what makes people healthy. My nursing education was at Augustana College. We had opportunities to travel. I went to East Africa back in 1970 and discovered people along the way, and it seemed that I got more interested then in transcultural nursing and people's ideas about health and illness and how those were different based on where they grew up and their experiences.
Ruth Ennisfett was an assistant professor of nursing. I was born in northwestern Minnesota in a rural community. My mother, who was a nurse, she was respected when anybody was sick, and she could talk to the medical people. And at that time, you were a nurse or you were a teacher. Thanks to my mother, she said, if you're going to be a nurse, you're going to go to a college. And ended up going to St. Olaf for my first educational experience. So I went out to Mass General in Boston, the so-called welfare part of the hospital. And I found that although it wasn't the high-powered medical place, it was really interesting for the diversity of the patients who came there. I have always been curious about how other people live their lives.
I'm Joyce Miller, and I am the current chair of the nursing department, as well as the director of the master's program and the director of the doctoral transcultural nursing program. I grew up in a little town called Sleepy Eye, Minnesota. When I was 16 years old, I just applied to the hospital and said I wanted to learn how to become a nursing assistant. So I mentored with some pretty awesome nurses, and it was at that point that I said, this is what I want to do.
Catherine Bunker. I grew up in Minnesota, St. Louis Park in Minnetonka. I think I had a really deep caring for just people. Very young in my life, I went to college at Mankato State University, and I majored in nursing and got my BSN. After that, I worked for many years, and then eventually came to a decision to go back to college. And I was very drawn to the unique program of transcultural nursing. What does it mean to really work across multiple cultures and populations and people from different classes and different circumstances? That really appealed to me.
I am Dr. Lisa Van Getsen. I am an assistant professor and program director of the Doctorate of Nursing Practice and Family Nurse Practitioner program. I grew up in Midwestern Illinois. I felt called by God when I was in high school to care for sick people. The interesting thing was that none of us in our family were ever sick, so I'm not quite sure. I blame God for this one. In 1982, I graduated with my BSN. When I was obtaining my DMP at Augsburg, I was very inspired by the wide-angle perspective into healthcare and nursing and understanding this transcultural perspective. Of course, as a Native American woman, I really resonated with that.
My name is Katie Clark, and I'm an assistant professor of nursing, and I also direct the Augsburg Central Health Commons. So I grew up primarily in White Bear Lake, Minnesota. It became more clear to me the older I got that I wanted to do something where it was working with people, and nursing seemed like a good fit. I graduated in 2002. My BSN Augsburg had a program where it was focused on transcultural nursing. I got to do outreach. I realized how transformative having some of those experiences was for my ability to connect, and it made me really fired up.
We are the first completion program for RNs who wanted a BSN in the state of Minnesota. Donna Peterson, she became the first director at Augsburg. It was 100% day school. It had to be that you had at least 6 months of full-time employment under your belt. 76 was the first class. Pam Larson was the other faculty member, and Donna. And then they recruited Bev Nielsen and myself.
I had worked with Dr. Bev Nielsen on developing a few courses for a master's program in transcultural nursing. We offered those courses to students as continuing professional development primarily, but it evolved into a program.
My husband and I moved down to Rochester. I was approached by Rick Toney in the spring of '98, and maybe Beth Nielsen. They asked me if I would consider coming back to Augsburg. First, I told them no, but I recruited Mary Beth Bay. And then I got the call from either Rick or Bev saying, we have 65 students. I came on board.
I remember my interview with Bev, and she said to me, "So, what's your theory of nursing?" My theory of nursing is supporting autonomy through relationships. Bev got onto that very well. So I came to Augsburg, 1999.
It was in maybe the fall of 2001 that Dr. Nielsen was talking about retirement. I assumed the role of department chair in the fall of 2002.
Bev was somebody who was very creative, very open to ideas. Cheryl was really interested in connecting nationally. Cheryl was just, if you have an idea, try it out. It was always supported, that kind of creative work.
My career started as a 2-year degree nurse. I could see the writing on the wall that I really needed additional education. Augsburg came to Rochester in '98. I finished that in 2002. I really want to go beyond my nurse manager role. Well, I better get my master's degree. Cheryl Looning was the new chair. She was asking us how we liked the program and what are things that they could change. And I said, well, I really am looking at a nurse leader role. And by the time I finished my BSN, Augsburg started a track with the master's program. And I finished that in 2005. Augsburg started their doctoral program in transcultural nursing. Why not? So it started in 2008 and finished in 2011. I'm an Augie 3 times. Part of my story is I can do it, you can do it. I was working one day and my pager went off, and it was Sue Nash, the director of the BSN program in Rochester. She said, have you ever thought about teaching? I taught 1 class that first year. Pretty soon I have 4 classes a year. And then, well, would you consider applying for a position here? I have been teaching at Augsburg for 15 years now. I started in 2005.
I came and got my master's degree here at Augsburg College. And then as soon as I graduated, I was invited by the then chair, Cheryl Looning, to come and teach. I think we started in 2005, and I taught a few years, and then was also very much engaged in the first doctor of nursing practice in transcultural nursing, and I was part of that first cohort and graduated with my DNP in 2011.
Dr. Lisa Van Getsen took on the role of director of the program. And so it was through her efforts we got approval from the faculty for the DNP, FNP track of study.
I became part of Augsburg's nursing faculty in 2011. In 2013, I was asked to join the Augsburg nursing faculty in a meeting to dream and create an additional track in their DNP program as an FNP. I agreed as long as we could dream and discuss about having an FNP track which integrated transcultural, holistic, and integrative health. Dr. Cheryl Looning and I began to plan the program. We began the program with 2 faculty and 7 students. Today we have over 12 faculty and about 78 DNP, FNP students.
The Health Commons originally was called the Nursing Center. It was started in 1992 with Bev Nielsen, who was the chair at that time and a parishioner at Central Lutheran Church. And Central Lutheran Church had been doing all these things, including a free clothing closet for people experiencing homelessness in the inner city of Minneapolis. So she saw an opportunity that students could come and have a more service learning experience.
That was Bev's true heart. And so she started the Commons. That was all on our own time.
In the early days, there were no directors. When I first came as department chair, we had some creative ways of figuring out how we could get a director position to be maintained for the Health Commons. And initially, Ruth Innisvet and Linda Holt took on that position, and later Dr. Katie Clark.
It was one long room that looked a little bit clinicky. People came to ask for help from the nurse. They had to have a problem they needed help with. Health promotion, health education was the beginning, I think, of the nursing center.
There was kind of this shift in thinking over the years that this isn't about providing a service, but this is really about mutual benefit. We are able to be there, break down some barriers, figure out what people want for their health. And also, it's an opportunity for nurses to understand a population that is often hidden from their own.
Eventually, we got a little bit larger space, and then we could actually have coffee and we could have a little table. That shifted some of the context and the environment to make it more hospitable and more welcoming as a place just to be.
Going from the term nursing center to health commons was a real shift that opened things up. Because then people didn't have to feel like, what are you doing here? Are you doing medicine here? That kind of dissipated.
In 2009, when I was first started, that was the first DNP class. And they were working at the Health Commons and wanted to come up with a model.
What does it mean to be hospitable? What does it mean to be not judging? What does it mean to have mutuality? These are very profound ideas that are drawn into that model that are not common language in those conversations.
The core of it is hospitality. At Central, it's offering a cup of coffee, it's making eye contact, it's giving people choice, it's not making people feel like they have to share something with us in order to gain something. At Cedar Riverside, it's offering Somali tea or sambusa, or offering just a space to gather. In 2011, as part of my DNP project, we started another Health Commons in Cedar Riverside. We are partnered with Fairview and the East Africa Health Project. 2015, Rebecca Hartwig became the director. Last year, 3 graduate DNP students started the Rochester Health Commons. We're not sure where it's going to land, but it's been really awesome to have these students kind of fall in love with the idea of starting a Health Commons and what could that look like, and they've done an excellent job.
Bev understood that if you take anthropology and the liberal arts and live it out, then we are the front runners. We're the interface of that interaction because we deal with the existential question in the physical realm every day. And what more impact is the liberal arts education than when you hold a mother's hand as she faces having her child in ICU or having to tell someone that there's no more immunotherapy. Bev's vision really, I think, brought us into that next level.
By better understanding ourselves, we're better able to understand the world that we're in and the world as we would want it. Health happens in so many different ways, in so many different forms. Thinking that we know the answers is the first thing that we kind of need to unpack and realize we don't. We can think we know, but we don't. Having that humility to know we're not always the experts and to de-emphasize those professional tasks is huge.
Why Augsburg? What I hear over and over and over again, it's the relationship-based program. Small classes, our focus on social justice, and we have good faculty. That's what I hear.
From women who have been prostituted, from people who are living on the streets, from going to jail and talking about mass incarceration and how it's the new Jim Crow, looking at root causes for things and really engaging in ways that we don't often do.
The nursing department was composed of all women who were completely committed to nursing and to the vision for social justice and as well as transcultural nursing.
It is often with so little that we do so much.
There were many days when I don't know how we managed all that. I think there's just tremendous commitment. I think people are called to this work. So it's not just a job. So of course they do more spend more time, have more commitments, go the extra mile every day because of it. So that's how it happened.